What's up, movie lovers? I'm Mike, and this is Gotta Love Them Movies. You guys, welcome back to Gotta Love Them Movies, your daily dose of movie news. I'm your host, Mr. Mike Brown, and I'm here all the time. You guys, today is a beautiful Friday afternoon. Some of you have been out watching WandaVision. I have not seen it yet. I have not had a chance to see WandaVision yet. Last night was a late night for me, you guys. If you don't already know this, I have insomnia. I don't know if it's like actual insomnia or just the fact that my sleep cycle is all over the place all the time, and I never really get to sleep the way that I think that my body should sleep. But hey, this is the world that we're living in, or rather, this is the world that I'm living in, and everybody else just gets to be a passenger along for the ride. And my passenger along for this particular ride is a very good friend of mine. My guest for today, we've known each other for quite some time. She's an improviser. We cross paths at so many different improv festivals. In fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Shirley, but I think we met at the Alaska State Improv Festival. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful human being, a very knowledgeable human being, someone who has a lot of experience and fun and excitement behind them. Please put your hands together for a very good friend of mine, Ms. Shirley Chan.
Yes, thank you.
Woo-woo.
I'm excited.
Shirley, how have you been? What's new? What's shaking?
Yeah, just living that pandy life. Yeah, drinking lots of coffee. Also have insomnia. Yeah.
It's the best, isn't it? You get to stay up late and just do nothing and just eat potato chips all night, and then just sometimes you fall asleep and then you wake back up and you're just wired, right?
I fall asleep to reality competition shows and ruin them for myself.
You wake up during the finale, and you miss like all the juicy bits in between.
And that's the winner. It's done.
Ta-da! And then it's like sleeping through Lord of the Rings and then just waking up at the very end and, oh, he destroyed the ring. Save the day. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Go Frodo.
You missed the giant battle run eye wiggling around.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Anyway, Shirley, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. You know, you're coming all the way from, correct me if I'm wrong, San Francisco, California, correct?
Very close, right across the bay in Oakland, California.
I was down between San Fran or Oakland. I was like, I can't remember which one.
It's okay.
So what's I'm trying to think of what's a girl like you doing in a place like this? You're an accomplished improviser. You've been in the scene for quite some time. We travel around, not together, but we see each other frequently at different improv festivals. What makes you qualified to sit down? This is something I ask all of my guests. What makes you qualified to sit down and chat movies for a while?
Mike, damn it.
Hey, family show. Watch that language.
I have a lot of opinions loosely held, and I can explain them. But movies specifically, I'm curious about forms of communication and how we tell stories. But I have to admit, I'm not an expert on movies themselves.
Oh, Shirley, you should have just ended like 20 seconds ago. I'm curious about storytelling, and I explore various forms.
It's the linchpin of human society.
Yes. That's what makes you qualified. Anyway, Shirley, thank you so much for joining. We're going to get into it in just a second. But before we do, guys, if you haven't already done so, head over to YouTube and type in Gotta Love Them Movies. In the top right-hand corner of the screen, you will see a red square or a rectangle as it were, that says subscribe. Go ahead and click on that button. What clicking on that button does is it helps us to widen our subscriber base. And with the more subscribers the channel receives, the more watched content the channel receives. And with the more watched content, I get to make this show my full-time job because I get to earn ad revenue. Hooray! So, of course, as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, the live portion of the show will move from Facebook to YouTube. So just keep that on your radar. And, of course, guys, if you have any questions, if there's anything movie-related, excuse me, I just had some carbonation. Now it's coming back up. If you had any questions, movie-related, like movie theories, oh, what does this mean? Oh, I heard about this thing. Send me an email at gottalovethemmovies@gmail.com. And we will talk about your questions and comments and fan theories and like all of the little morsel juicy things related to movies, television shows. Hey, even theme parks. We got some theme park news coming up later. So send me an email, you guys. All right. So with all that down and out of the way, now it's time to jump in and take a little bit of movie news.
What?
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 All right, you guys, and our first bit of movie news today comes in the form of Disneyland. If you have been living under a rock lately, then I guess you wouldn't already be familiar with the fact that there is a worldwide pandemic happening at the moment. I know, big shocker, right? And with this pandemic has caused multiple businesses to shut down. A lot of restaurants have had to close their doors. A lot of retail stores have had to close their doors. And in California, particularly where the pandemic has hit pretty hard, pretty bad. You know, I live in New York City, and a lot of stuff in New York has been shut down. But all throughout California, Governor Gavin Newsom has shut down a lot of various businesses and go-to type things. Movie theaters have been shut down indefinitely. Theme parks like Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, SeaWorld, Universal Studios, like all of those Six Flags, all of those theme parks and places that large in mass gatherings of people, that's all been shut down. Well, very recently, Gavin Newsom made some interesting progress. Apparently, he was waiting for, there's different code levels. There's like green and yellow and orange and red. And depending on the color, depends on the severity of the pandemic in any given particular region, right? So Gavin Newsom was waiting for the state of California to go into that yellow state to say, we're not in green, we're not, all systems go yet, but we wanted to wait until things got to yellow so that we could open like Disney World or Disneyland rather. In other movie theaters and things of the like, right? Well, he's recently changed his opinion, and it looks like in a state of orange, which is slightly more severe than a yellow, he has decided that he believes it to be okay, with many restrictions, to open up Disneyland and other theme parks once again. This comes with the restriction of 25% capacity in the theme park itself. So it's not going to be at full capacity. I think Disney World right now is currently operating on a similar 25% capacity rule. So if you show up and they're already at capacity, well then sorry, you have to wait until the park relieves itself of park guests before you can enter. Shirley, I have a few thoughts about this. In some first half of my brain, my knee-jerk reaction is, oh, come on, buddy, what are you doing? Like, you've held strong for so long. Why do we need to, why is now, especially with the rising cases of COVID happening, especially with like these new strains of COVID coming out. Yes, vaccinations are being administered. It's even in the parking lot at Disneyland. the parking lot at Disneyland, people are administering the vaccinations to the public in mass, depending on what category they fall into. So if part of my knee-jerk reaction just says, I don't know if this is such a great idea. The other part of my brain says, well, I have been to Orlando during the pandemic. I have gone to Universal Studios during the pandemic. I feel there's a safe way to do this. And a lot of the reports are saying that there's very little, if any, transmission of the COVID-19 virus in these theme parks. So there is a way to go about enjoying yourself and having fun and doing it safely. But I don't know. I'm caught somewhere in the middle. Shirley, what are your thoughts on this? Because you live in California. You are a lot of these restrictions are put on you in your personal life and your fun life and things that you're able to go out and do. How do you feel about the possibility of theme parks opening back up very soon in California?
I mean, all of the mixed emotions that you named. I think we're in this really interesting time in human history where we have so much access to information and we can educate ourselves and kind of do that balance sheet of, oh, here are the risks, here are the benefits, does this actually make sense? But we don't have as much information as an elected official at Gavin Newsom's level, I have to assume. So I flat out, there will be no 100% perfect solution. There are risks. There just are. I mean, yeah, the color coding system. If it's an orange risk, it's an orange risk, so that side of the balance sheet hasn't changed. I wonder what changed on the benefit side. If there's something that, he knows as governor, that's saying, we need this for the economy. Things are shifting too far over on this side. What does that look like? I don't know what kind of calculus.
You kind of raise an interesting point there where you say we don't have the same type of information that Gavin Newsom has.
Yeah.
And additionally, you said what changed on his behalf. The only thing that I can think of that has changed is first of all, as you mentioned, there is an economic need for this. Yes, Disney needs the money, the influx of money, but even more than that, we need the economy to be more fluid than it currently is. And opening theme parks and movie theaters would be a step toward. And I lump those two things in together, but they're separate things. Movie theaters, for clarification, are not being considered to open right now. It's just theme parks, right? But yes, we need the economy to be more fluid than it currently is in order to survive the way that we have been. So I understand the need. But the only thing that I can think of, you asked the question, what has changed? The thing that comes to mind right now, for me anyway, is that information, we have more information now than we did 3 months ago, than we did 6 months ago, right? Florida, Disney World has been open. Universal Studios has been open. They've been operating at 25% capacity. There have been studies that show the transmission of the virus is not as, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for. It's not being transmitted in those environments right now. And if it is, it's so minimal that it's barely worth reporting. And those are my words. Those are not anybody else's words. But that's kind of the situation where we're at. I think the general public is going to have a hard time accepting this, especially as you said, information is so readily available. We tend to educate ourselves. But when we have people, even this show should not be taken as this is where you go to get your information. I like to use this as like, this is your information, or this is your daily dose of movie news. That's my tagline. But it's movie news. That's not safety news. There's more reputable sources to go to about like COVID-19. And should you actually go to a theme park, don't take my word for it. I don't know. Any last thoughts there, Shirley?
I mean, it's the crux of free will. To be informed and make an informed choice ultimately is owning, like what is it worth to you, and that equation is different for everyone. It's a hard time.
I agree. You have to make your best informed decision that you can. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think of Governor Gavin Newsom possibly opening up? And again, this is not a done deal. This is still, this is one of those discussion points that's on the table to be considered. It's not officially happening, but it is something that is seriously being considered right now, and a very good possibility that they may be opening sooner rather than later. What are your thoughts on this whole thing? Are you for it? Are you against it? Do you think it's too soon? Or you think it's past due? What are your thoughts? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know what those are. All right, guys, our next bit of movie news today is, every time I look at myself on screen, I always feel like I'm out of focus. What is happening with my autofocus right now? It just looks weird. It looks wonky. Let's see if that fixes anything. Anyway, guys, our next bit of movie news today comes in the form of, I feel like we're just going to be talking about Marvel and the MCU from here on out. Tom Holland recently gave a statement when he was asked about Spider-Man 3 and like his thoughts on it and like what's going on. And he had something very interesting to say, which is, Tom Holland says, quote, Spider-Man 3 is, or this is the quote, the most ambitious standalone superhero movie ever made. Now, again, knee-jerk reactions will say, hang on a second, what about the Avengers? Yeah. The Avengers was a cumulative, it was a coming together. They're not standalone films. In order to make the Avengers work, it means that all of the other films in the MCU have to work, and then the Avengers is the roof on top of that house. And it's quite an impressive roof, you guys. But in terms of a standalone wall, and I'm going to call this the Spider-Man wall because he's the wall crawler. I don't know, I'm making this analogy up as I go. It doesn't make any sense, right? Cool. The Spider-Man films are standalone films. Yes, they're sequels or spin-offs or, integrated in how they are, but I almost called him Tobey Maguire. Tom Holland is calling this the most ambitious standalone superhero movie ever made. Let's jump into the article real quick. Tom Holland has more to say about it, which is, if I can find it, which is this. He says, now he uses a little bit of profanity in here, so I'm going to try and censor that out. He says, I can say that it's the most ambitious standalone superhero movie ever made. You sit down, read the script, see what they're trying to do, and they're succeeding. It's really impressive. I've never seen a standalone superhero movie quite like it. And I'm just, again, that lucky little guy who happens to be Spider-Man in it. We got a lot more. We have a lot more shooting to do. We started before Christmas and shot for like 7 weeks. We stopped for the Christmas break. And, then we're starting again. I'm just as excited as everyone else to see it and to be a part of it. Big words. Wow. Words from Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland, saying that, this is shaping up to be the most ambitious Spider-Man superhero movie ever made. Now, we know this. A lot of his comments make sense so far. It has already been confirmed that Dr. Octopus or rather Alfred Molina, is reprising his role as Doc Ock from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. We know that Jamie Foxx is coming back to reprise his role as Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield. Just yesterday on the show, we talked about how Sony Studios themselves started teasing the character of Ned Leeds to become the Hobgoblin in this next movie. We know that in this universe, Michael Keaton as Vulture will most likely come back. We've already been teased Mac Gargan, who is the Scorpion. We know that Doctor Strange is going to be in this movie, which means the multiverse will explode. Well, obviously we have all these other characters from other kind of franchises coming into this world. There are rumors that Donald Glover will become the Prowler in this movie. And because Donald Glover as the Prowler, there's a good chance Miles Morales might make an appearance in this movie. My goodness, what else? We haven't even talked about in a minute. You know what? Let's just do it now. Look at this. Marvel will not confirm to Tom Holland, because he's such a blabbermouth, if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are going to be in the movie. In this article, let me jump down into this article for a second. Tom Holland says, beats me. I don't know if Maguire and Garfield are in the movie. If they are, they haven't told me. That would be something, and that's something that Marvel would do. I would watch the film and be like, so that's who that tennis ball was. Meaning that during filming, like a lot of times during filming, these actors don't act with other actors. They act with tennis balls. And the tennis ball is a placeholder so that later they can CGI in another character. So it's very possible that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are going to be in this movie. It's not confirmed. That needs to be delineated. That has not been confirmed. It's likely, but it has not been confirmed. So everybody's talking about it. We're talking about it, right? So Tom Holland is such a blabbermouth. Disney can't even tell him who's in this movie for fear that he's going to spill the beans. He's going to spill all the big secrets. Shirley.
He already up about this ball, so.
We know a tennis ball is going to be in the movie. And if a tennis ball is about the size of like a hand grenade, and the Hobgoblin uses hand grenades, well, of course the Hobgoblin's going to be. No,
we know the whole plot.
That's it. Done. And Shirley.
I'm going to be provocative.
Yes.
And because you named like so many Marvel characters, right? Like, so then is the characterization of this as the best standalone movie still true if it's getting in all the side support?
Hang on a second. What is it exactly that you're asking or that you're saying right now? I just want to make sure that I understand you correctly.
Yeah. Is it even the Tom Blabbermouth Holland statement that it's the best standalone superhero
most
movie?
Most ambitious.
Thank you. Do you think that it's fair to still call it a standalone movie if it's pulling in so many different Marvel characters?
You know, that's a fair point.
Will there be for large plots?
That's a fair point. That thought has also crossed my mind. That's a great question. Does it make it a standalone film if if the plot is going to revolve around all of these other franchises? I mean, the plot, we already know it's going to revolve around the multiverse. The multiverse is going to be the central focal point of this film and however it plays out. I think it might be fair to say the most ambitious standalone franchise, but then again, the Avengers is a standalone franchise. I don't know. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Shirley, something that I have always been concerned about, or let me back up. I say quite frequently, in Kevin Feige I trust. In Kevin Feige, I trust. Kevin Feige, the executive producer, the top guy over at Marvel. He runs everything Marvel right now and has been for some time now. Kevin Feige doesn't really make bad movies right now. He doesn't make bad movies. He's been making some very wonderful creative choices. Now with WandaVision, we have like some really great television to look forward to. We have Falcon and the Winter Soldier happening. We have. So I'm trying to get my focus. Why am I so out of focus? I'm so sorry, everybody. Let's see if this fixes anything. Cool. Kevin Feige knows what he's doing. He's proven that he knows what he's doing. I always say, in Kevin Feige, I trust. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to make a good movie. But I gotta say, all of these characters in one movie, we've seen this over and over and over again. Spider-Man 3, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3, it didn't even have that many characters in it. It had 3 villains. We had the Green Goblin, we had Sandman, and we had Venom. We had 3 characters in that movie, or 3 villains in that movie, rather. It suffered from the too many character syndrome. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 tried to do the same thing. Now, personally, I really enjoy The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it was a decently balanced movie. A lot of other people, pretty much everybody else on the planet, disagrees with me. That it suffers from the too many villains, too much stuff happening syndrome, right? Well, now we jump into a movie that is going to have 20,000 main characters, right?
So
I don't know. Shirley, do you, I always say, in Kevin Feige, I trust. But is this a situation where we have to say, hold on, pump your brakes a little bit? What do you think?
I get what you're saying. I mean, it's to tell a good story. Like there are invisible decisions being made about for on the audience's behalf. What do I focus on? What can I follow so that I can just sit back and relax and trust whoever is just moving the story along, telling me that, the story's progressing this way. It's a movie isn't a choose your own adventure book. You can't just go off and follow something that catches your attention in different directions. It has to kind of navigate for you while you feel just immersed. So I totally feel this. I think that it takes a lot of talent to pull together the many different layers and threads that have happened in the Marvel Universe movies. So he has a proven track record. So yeah, I also trust in that. And if you'll allow me to get poetic for a second.
Wax away.
Yeah. Since we're talking Spider-Man, when you think about a spider web, you look at one cohesive spider web, and often you're not thinking about the thousands of threads and connections that have to be pulled together to make that one cohesive web. So I hope and I trust that if there are all of these like really exciting little sparkling threads being pulled into this very ambitious movie, that there's still someone at the helm who knows how to pull it all together cohesively.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of deep. It's deep in an extremely nerdy kind of way, and I love it. That is, as you say, like one of the most poetic things I've ever heard about a franchise such as this. Like taking the symbolism of what this thing is and then pulling out meaning in terms of how to produce such a thing. I've never heard it put in terms of, did you just did it just come to you, or was this a concept that you came up with a while ago and now you just brought it back to the surface?
It just came to me. I think you laid out all of the information so well. You set me up, man, in a good way.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's deeply poetic, and I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. But again, question is for you guys: what do you think of Tom Holland's comments calling this the most ambitious standalone superhero movie ever made? Do you think it is going to be that? Or do you agree with Shirley in that? Hang on a second. If we're pulling in all of these other characters from other movies and other franchises and other multiverses, does that really qualify it as a standalone superhero film? Yeah, what are your thoughts? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know what those are. All right, guys. Tangentially moving across from one Marvel property to another Marvel property. If you haven't seen the movie Nomadland, go out and see the movie. I currently haven't seen it. I haven't had the time to go watch it. I know it sounds a little hypocritical. Hey, go watch this movie, even though I haven't seen it. It's been nominated for 4 awards at the Golden Globes, including Best Picture, Best Motion Picture Drama, Best Director from Chloe Zhao, a few other nominations as well. But it also stars Frances McDormand, and if you know me, I love pretty much anything Frances McDormand is in, and she always picks like some of the best properties, best stories to be in. 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri was one of my favorite films. That was so good. I love that movie so much. Anyway, Chloe Zhao, writer-director of Nomadland, is currently, I'm pretty sure they finished filming The Eternals, but The Eternals, the Marvel property, going from an indie filmmaking background that Chloe Zhao has to going into a big budget studio film for Marvel of The Eternals is kind of, it's not unheard of. I mean, look at the Russo brothers. Look at what the Russo brothers have done. They were television comedy directors. And then they went on to direct the highest grossing movie of all time. Period. So, not to say that, like a small indie filmmaker can't go on and make an incredible... Same thing with James Gunn. James Gunn was a bizarre indie filmmaker, and then he came to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and did Guardians of the Galaxy and was beloved by everyone, and now everybody knows his name and praises the ground that he walks on, right? Cool. In The Eternals, Selma Hayek kind of leaked a little bit of information regarding the filmmaking style of the movie. And it sounds like, in terms of cinematography, in terms of how the movie is going to look and feel, they're not doing CGI. They're not doing green screen. Well, I'm sure they're going to have to in some regard in this and that and the other, because it's Marvel and it's superheroes and it's outer space. So there is some stuff that they are going to have to do. But for the most part, as Selma Hayek is reporting, or not reporting, but as she leaked to the press, they're filming the vast majority of this stuff on location. You know how groundbreaking it was when we all heard that, when I say we all, I wasn't even born yet, but when George Lucas was filming Star Wars in Tunisia. Star Wars, for the most part, was all filmed in practical locations. Yes, there was, some early CGI happening. Yes, there was a lot of compositing happening, especially with the outer space type stuff. But for the most part, all of the on location type stuff, that was all done on location. They found, so same thing with Dune, same thing with Lord of the Rings. When they filmed Lord of the Rings, they went out and scouted real, actual locations in New Zealand to say, yeah, it's New Zealand, but this is Middle Earth. just look at how vast and diverse this land is. And it is. And now they're doing the same thing for Eternals. Now this plays into Chloe Zhao's classic filmmaking style as an indie art house filmmaker. She does a lot of stuff on location as opposed to on set. And being that she's taking her signature filmmaking style into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think is kind of going to be a breath of fresh air, and we're going to see some really interesting stuff from her in a big, major cinematic, kind of way. Shirley, when you hear about something like this, where Marvel gives the creativity license to their individual filmmakers to do and to produce the things that they want to film and produce and make the film the way that they want to make the film, how does this strike you? Do you think that a film like this, with a very different cinematographer behind the lens to bring a very different feel, do you think that's going to feel congruent with the rest of the MCU? Or do you think that this is going to kind of go off the rails in terms of visuals a little bit? How does this strike you?
Wow. Again, amazing setup, Mike. You're so good at, summarizing a lot of things going on. I fall on the side of empower the artist and let them work to their strengths. So I'm all for, Chloe Zhao working in the style, in the manner that she's strongest. I think it applies, like, even if we're not all helming gigantic Marvel Universe films, it's true, right? Like, we could probably all look at moments in our own lives where it's like, oh, I stayed true to me and was able to apply it to the task at hand, and I still met the brief. Like, I had to do what was asked of me. So I think, like, there's an ability to marry, like, this is the story to be told, and you have to hit these key points, whatever the key points are, visually, plot wise, they've got to be laid out, I would hope. So she's hitting that, she's doing her job, and she's getting to do her job in the way that she knows she's strong. Like, that sounds like win-win to me.
I think right there, that's the thing that disappoints me the most about what went down between Kevin Feige and Edgar Wright, filmmaker Edgar Wright, because he had been developing the Ant-Man movie ever since the first Iron Man came out, ever since 2008. And so he'd been working on this Ant-Man movie for so long and, developing it and trying to get it up off the ground. And for them to part ways over creative differences, because Edgar Wright wanted to make a Marvel movie, but Marvel didn't want to make an Edgar Wright movie. And I think that's something that hurts all of our hearts a little bit is, yeah, I love the Ant-Man movie directed by Peyton Reed. It's wonderful. It's great. It's really funny, and it works. But I really would have loved to see an Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie. Like, that would have been a completely different film. I would have loved to have seen that. Same thing with, I talk about this all the time, Lord and Miller, when they were developing the Han Solo movie. First of all, nobody asked for a Han Solo movie in the Star Wars universe. Nobody asked for that. But it's something that we got, and, Kathleen Kennedy greenlit it, whatever. What are you doing if you hire Lord and Miller? You know their style. You know that they're the guys from 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, the Lego movie. That's the kind of movie that they're going to make when you hire them to do a Star Wars movie, to do a Han Solo movie. That's the movie that I wanted to see. Yeah, I mean, like, when she fired them halfway through production, and then, just because, the film isn't working the way that, our vision was, why did you hire them in the first place, Okay, yeah, the Ron Howard version, it's okay. It's not a great movie. Bleh, whatever. I wanted to see the Lord and Miller version of Star Wars, right? I wanted to see the Edgar Wright version of Ant-Man. All this stuff. And we could probably go on and on and on and on about that. But
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it's like it seems like when there are creative differences, but you enter like a really pivotal business relationship in this way, it's not really creative difference because the creative style is already all out there. That part isn't a surprise. So it almost seems like you need a really experienced like couples counselor to just help some people with their communication. They're probably arguing and like it's frustrating as a creative when they have this like sometimes your mind can go to just explode into all of these the full picture and you have to but it's so hard to slow down and bring everyone else along for the ride and I think any movie production you're trying to do that for hundreds thousands yeah like thousands of people in all of these different realms and trying to balance like communicating enough about the vision so that you can move forward with everyone on board, like working together as a team, you have to be a good leader. But not so much that like you're stuck in a loop of just trying to explain a vision that will never make sense until you make it happen. There's some kind of like alchemy and faith. So it seems like they just need a couples counselor when there's this breakdown of trust in each other. It's a partnership.
Oh man, I could not agree more. That's the most succinct way to put it. As you previously aforementioned, the waxing of being poetic in that regard, it brings it all to light and just said, yeah, it's hard. It is a hard thing. This is something that, Kim, my fiance and I talk about every now and again. We have this silly series that we've put out on a different YouTube channel called Harwood's House, where, it's a 90s sitcom. Every episode is like 5 minutes long. It's a 90s sitcom starring our cat, Harwood, and how he's not our cat. He is a cat, but like he's more of a person. He's a roommate. He's not a pet, right? And so it's just our wacky adventures living with our roommate Harwood, right? Whenever I write the script, I have a very specific idea as to how this is going to go. And in my mind, it just seems, well, yeah, I put it all in the script. Read the script. And then, like, sometimes my thoughts don't translate from my brain to the page to Kim's brain. So when Kim reads it, she reads it in a very different way of because I feel like I'm being explicitly clear. And then we go to film, and she's like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, how is this going to work? How is this going to translate? And I'm like, trust me, just do it like, say the line like this. And she's like, but that doesn't make sense. I'm like, trust me, it'll work. And then I edit the whole thing together and see, ta-da, and it works. But it's, like you say, it's hard to translate what's happening in your brain to another human being.
We each have a whole universe happening here, and language is just an incomplete tool to like it's one of our best tools, but that's why art exists. We're trying to share the individual experience with the world so that like we can connect our like multiverses. Right?
I want to put can I put that quote on a t-shirt? We need a t-shirt that says language is one of our best tools for communication. But it's I can't remember how you phrase. I'll have to go back and rewind the video. But language is one of our best tools for communication, but it's not perfect. That's why art exists.
Yeah. May I have a t-shirt?
Yeah, I will put your name on it. Quote from Shirley Chan at Early Girl.
Finally.
Oh man, that's wonderful. Anyway, guys, question is for you. How do you see Chloe Zhao's a cinematic experience of the Eternals going down. Do you think it's going to be a breath of fresh air? Do you like what Selma Hayek is reporting that she's doing behind the camera in terms of how it's going to look, how it's going to feel? Or would you feel more comfortable in more of like the cinematic storytelling visually that we've already kind of come to know to be associated with the MCU? What are your thoughts? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know what those are. All right, guys, we have one last bit of movie news to cover, and that is this. Speaking of Chloe Zhao, let's just jump right into it. Chloe Zhao's next project after the Eternals that she's going to be working on, she has been in talks with Universal Studios, and she's now accepted a position where she is going to be directing a brand new version of Dracula. We're gonna get a brand new Dracula movie with a completely different view, completely different look, style, feel. It's this article points out from was it the Hollywood Reporter. She's bringing her same signature cinematic style, storytelling style rather, that is, in terms of being outside in natural light and not doing sets, but doing real grounded storytelling in terms of character, in terms of doing something new and different, and actually having something to say. This is the first time, now somebody correct me, somebody on the internet please correct me, this is the first time that we've had, first of all, an Asian filmmaker do a Dracula film, but also a female director do a Dracula film. Yes, there's like vampire movies. Vampire movies are like a different thing. Dracula is a very specific character that has a very specific motive, has a very specific story to tell. I think it's fair to say the quintessential, as of now, the quintessential Dracula story that's ever been told was Bela Lugosi, which is it's maybe the second closest to that would be Bram Stoker's Dracula. I believe that was 1991, something like that. Just completely, Francis Ford Coppola directed that. Beautiful, beautiful movie. I'm actually kind of excited to see what this version of Dracula is going to look like, going to feel like, and more specifically, what is Chloe Zhao going to say in this movie? We live in a world now that is so vastly different than the world was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. People are different. Our conversations are different. And, if you're going to remake a movie, if you're going to reboot a movie, cool, okay. But what are you saying? Why now? Why this project? And I think, Universal has been trying to jumpstart their Universal Monster universe again. We got the Mummy movie in 2017, I think, with Tom Cruise, which was a complete train wreck. That movie was just awful, so bad. And they had planned to do an entire monster universe using the Tom Cruise Mummy movie as a jumping off point. It was terrible. The whole thing got scrapped. Fast forward 2 years, 2019, we get The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss. Brilliant movie. It was made on a shoestring budget of $7 million. It raked in $107 million at the box office, more than 10 times its budget, right? Its production budget. So it did very, very well at the box office, very well received, and it was clever. It was smart, and based on that incarnation of a classic monster movie, we now get to see how Universal is kind of steering the ship a little bit, putting Chloe Zhao in the writing and directing chair of a brand new Dracula project. I think she's going to have something very unique, something very original to say in the guise of the most classic of all vampires, Dracula. Shirley, that's not you.
Yeah.
There you are. I clicked on the wrong thing. Shirley, I'm going to make you magically disappear. And now I'm going to make you magically reappear. Anyway, Shirley.
Invisible Shirley.
Invisible.
New Universal film. You saw it here first.
Speaking of the Invisible Man. Whoop, whoop. Anyway, so Shirley, vampire movies are a dime a dozen. Every decade, we have 5 or 10 different versions of vampire films. They are always popular. They never go away.
I was just saying I was so sick of the trope of, like, basically, like, the whiny, angsty, like, vampire. Yeah.
But in this report, it's just look at the headline. They're doing it as a sci-fi western, vampire. I don't even know what that means.
I don't either, but I'm excited. I'm hoping for Blade Runner and not not something cheesy like what was that? I'm blanking on that Will Smith movie that was a
Wild
Western.
Wild West. Or even Cowboys and Aliens. Not a great movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love you, Jon Favreau, but not a great movie.
In my imagination, I have like original Blade Runner vibes. Just I'm obviously projecting a ton.
No. Right now on CBS All Access, The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand is premiering 1 episode a week. Yesterday was the second to last episode of the series. Next week is the last episode of the series. It's a limited series. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I will do a full review of it probably in 2 weeks after the whole thing comes out and I've had a chance to watch all of it and process it. But all that is to say, I kind of see that, or if you're not familiar with The Stand, it's a story of like a post-apocalyptic, there's a disease, very timely. There's a disease called Captain Trips, and it takes out 95% of the world's population. Only 5% of people are left on planet Earth, and who are immune to Captain Trips. And now they're all kind of like warring for like battle of the Earth, and it's like there's angels and demons, and there's this whole thing with like Las Vegas, and so it's essentially good versus evil in that regard. So when I think of like a sci-fi western, that's kind of some of the imagery that pops up is a lot of the stuff from The Stand. And I could see kind of like if I'm mixing futuristic and sci-fi to mean one, maybe that's unfair to say, but I'm kind of envisioning maybe like a post-apocalyptic, like what is the world going to be like after COVID? How are we going to move forward as a society, as a group of people, in terms of acceptance, in terms of just letting people be people, in terms of making decisions, in terms of making smart decisions. And, maybe a vampire type disease could be a timely thing to say or use. I don't know. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah. So what I'm really excited about for a woman and a minority to helm, like, tackle a new take, like a new view on a classic story, is I'm really excited for what will probably be more nuance. Like when I look at some classic stories, the solution and the story can often jump to extremes of, oh, everyone must clash and fight, and some people are good or bad, and that's not real people. Real people are complicated. There's gray area, and even at the beginning of your show today, it was all about like, how do you even process the trade-offs involved in a really complex
Yeah.
decision? And everyone's making those like day in and day out on their own personal life level. So I I I think women bring that. This is a very sweeping generalization, because I mean it's crept into modern storytelling and filmmaking a lot. I've seen there is more nuance and for it without. I'm not the same artist that Chloe Zhao is, but it's like I'm just excited to see what new lens she's going to bring to it that will then hold up a mirror to us, like for us as the audience, to ourselves, our society. What can we learn about like how we relate to each other, how we can give back, like what we can expect, what do we owe each
Well, yeah,
other?
I think, like, as you point out, that's one of the most interesting things here is that from a female Asian perspective, we've never been able to have that perspective before in a genre like this. Like, why keep retelling the same story from the perspective of a straight white man? A straight white heterosexual man again and again and again. Not to say that straight white heterosexual men can't come up with interesting, new, creative,
That's great art.
groundbreaking ideas, but
Mhm.
why keep going after the same perspective, or seemingly having the same background again and again and again, when you can have something completely different? Like, ask somebody else who doesn't look like you, who doesn't sound like you, who hasn't had the same life experiences as you.
Yeah.
What can they bring to the table? What can we learn from them? I think that's what makes this
Yeah.
interesting.
It goes back to like what got you excited earlier about, like just talking about things versus telling a story, creating art as a way of bridging, like you don't know what's completely inside my head and what I've lived, like how the world comes in towards me. So it's just that, like, not, I don't know, like trying to knock down any category, just saying, hey, like there are all of these other categories that people in this world are living as. Like the world sees us from the outside a certain way, so then that affects how we're treated and then what we experience, right? It's this whole loop. So it's actually just like going to enrich art and like what enters people, like everyone's understanding of lived experience. It'll just enrich it. Yeah, like I'm not here to push down a category. I'm just saying, like,
Let's
wow,
expand
we're
it.
all
Let's
going to,
expand it a little bit.
we're going to, yeah,
Now, I think it also bears mentioning that Chloe Zhao by herself does not mean that this is going to be an excellent film. It could very well end up being a steaming pile of garbage because
yeah.
art, subjectivity, right? There's a reason it's called art as opposed to science, right? So it has the possibility to wind up on the cutting room floor, and Universal will look at this and say, "Oh, nope, this was a bad idea." Not a bad idea because we hired a female Asian director, but I mean, maybe her vision just didn't turn out for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's going to be a great movie. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad movie. It's just important that we explore other people's perspectives. I mean, Spider-Man 3 could be a steaming pile of garbage. The next, I don't know, Star Wars movie could be a steaming pile of garbage. It does, like, whatever the project is, we need to look for talent. We need to look for creative vision. And now we live in a day and age where it is becoming more and more incumbent upon us to find new voices and new storytelling voices. Um,
And can I jump in? I'm so sorry to
no, please.
interrupt, but like I super want to underscore your point that like, it because it's art, it isn't a guarantee that a talented artist at the helm will ensure, yeah, like a successful art piece, a film. But there is like this tension with when you're the first of something, right, to break into new
Yeah.
grounds. Like if um, a white male director makes a movie that doesn't do as well, it's that I'm guessing, but like that's not going to make studio heads think, oh, let's not try white male directors anymore.
Exactly. Yes.
It's more loaded with Chloe
Yes.
Zhao, and so part of me holds my breath a
Well,
little,
Wonder Woman
where
was the
it's like,
same thing.
oh, I hope so much,
Wonder
yeah.
Woman was the same exact thing. Before Wonder Woman came out, we all looked at it and said, "Oh, this looks great, but what if it's not?" There's a lot riding on, and it wasn't just Patty Jenkins, and it wasn't just Wonder Woman. It was the entire DCEU. Like the whole
Yeah.
DC faction of movies was kind of because Man of Steel had mixed reception. Batman versus Superman was a stinker. Suicide Squad was a stinker. There was another one. I can't remember what the anyway. But Wonder Woman, everything was riding on Wonder Woman. If Wonder Woman was not a good movie, and I'm not talking an excellent movie, if it wasn't a good movie, the whole thing, crumbles and falls apart. And it wasn't just a good movie; it was an excellent movie. But everything
Yeah.
was riding on it. If Wonder Woman didn't work, what would Patty Jane? Oh, great! She won an Academy Award for Monster. She got what's her bucket? Her Oscar for the movie Monster. But that was also like 15 years prior to Wonder Woman. So, and I hate to say, I mean, you're right. There is a lot riding on this new Dracula movie. What is she going to say? Is it going to be an excellent movie? Yeah.
Maybe I mean, this is the type of conversation to have, though, just to call out like, oh, like that's for most people. I don't think we're trying to be bad towards anyone,
No.
but that's like an implicit bias held, where it's like, oh, that says something about like an Asian woman filmmaker versus if a white male director, like it it might just be like, oh, wow, like that project must have really sucked versus
Right.
like there's a different level of
Right.
assignment of ownership there. Yeah. And like what it represents. So just to have conversations like this is really exciting for me because it's like, it's not pointing the finger. It's just sort of like, hey, like we're all imperfect and I do tons of stuff and I'm constantly
Yeah.
learning. Let's just talk.
Just be
Yeah,
aware of
let's
it.
just
Just be aware of it. It's true, and I think that's a great message to end on. Anyway, guys, question is for you: what do you think of Chloe Zhao writing and directing a brand new vision of a Dracula movie? What do you think that it could be like? What do you think it could be about? What things do you think that, in her specific artistic voice, what kind of things do you think she's going to bring to the table? What kind of things do you think she's going to say about the world that we live in and a world that we could live in potentially? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, guys, we have reached the portion of the show where we're going to take your live comments and questions. One of you has been firing in comments and questions all show long, so now we're just going to go in and take those now.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
All right, guys, one of you has been firing live comments and questions all show long, and that would be Irene Carroll. Now, Irene is going to be a guest on the show next week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Irene Carroll, first comment of the day says, now this goes all the way back to the Disneyland conversation that we had earlier. She says, wow, 25% capacity sounds like my childhood. When I went in the 80s, when she went in the 80s, before people had the Disney mania that they have today. I grew up in Fullerton, right outside of Anaheim. Yeah. And I feel like the same thing has happened with Comic-Con. The same thing has happened with, various public or social gatherings that have become more and more popular over the years. My attendance at Disney World over the years has progressively been like more and more, what am I trying to say? Full. There's just more people going to the parks than there ever have before. And then COVID-19 hit, and then everything came to a standstill. Shirley, are you an oft visitor of the theme parks? What's been your experience in terms of capacity?
Great question. I avoid them because of the crowds, and I hate waiting online. So that question, pointing that out, is it shifts the calculus for me. It's like, oh,
Fair play.
maybe I actually go even though there's a bit of a higher risk, because now there's this chance of not waiting as long.
Yeah.
It's not wild.
So you don't do like any like parades, like Thanksgiving Day parades or New Year's Eve events in mass?
Correct. I've tried. I love people, hate crowds.
Fair. Avoid Times Square. And if you want to go to Times Square, now's the best time to go because nobody's there. Tourism is not a thing in New York City right now.
Weird
I
feeling.
know,
Just
weird.
letting that sink in. Yeah.
Irene Carroll goes on to say, agree. This is same thing about the parks. I agree with you and Shirley. It should be open, and it is up for you to decide. Should you go or should you stay home? Yeah, I mean, that brings up an interesting point of, because there's a lot of discussion as to, well, how much should government be involved in my personal life? And like, I understand that the government is there just to, make sure that we're living our best lives possible.
Can we only do government info in grumpy Muppet voices? Marker, marker.
You need to get your vaccine today.
Here, you look up your own information.
For more information, go to information.gov. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. An observer of human behavior, someone who works very, very closely with the general public. It has been my experience that the general public cannot be trusted on their own. Previously I mentioned the show The Stand, which is based on the book by Stephen King, The Stand. And like I said, it follows the story of, we live in in the story, they live in a post-apocalyptic world where this Captain Trips virus has wiped out 95% of the population. Only 5% are left to kind of like take the world back, and like, what's the world going to be like? And it brings up this interesting philosophical question, which is, if people are left to their own devices, will they choose selfishness or selflessness? And there's no definitive answer to that. In my experience, there's always going to be a certain percentage of the population that choose selfishness no matter what. And even though I believe that is a smaller percentage of the population, that's also the population that has the loudest voice. Where if everyone is just walking around doing their thing, people are fairly quiet about it. Like, I wear my mask. I don't bring attention to the fact that I'm wearing a mask when I'm in public. But then there's other people that are not wearing their masks in public who are pointing their fingers in people's faces saying, "Ma, you don't need to wear a mask. Ma, you can't tell me what to do."
Like, I was just walking, buddy.
Yeah, I'm just here. Sorry. Bye.
Clearly you wanted to talk. Yeah, I know. I'll debate you on the foundational bit, sort of. I I think we're each responsible, like at the baseline level, for our own survival. So there's something interesting that happens with, like what that question doesn't get, shouldn't, I don't think, be asked in a vacuum of do you choose yourself over others? It's more, how set up are you to feel safe? How set up are you to know what the different things are that are at play? Free will is about, yeah, just like understanding what the choice actually is in front of you. And that's a very simple statement, but within it is, I mean, just everything that's complex
It's very,
about
very
life.
nuanced. Yeah.
Who even decides what are the right points of information to provide you? And so I think like government overreach focuses on like the debate that I've seen in the past year is what ends up being the regulation made, like a line has to be drawn just at a certain point and someone will always disagree with it. But I think what's really interesting that I'd love if we talked more about, not just you and me, is well, what is the right amount of information to how do we get back to a place where it's like people have a baseline trust of here is the information that everyone can agree to. Certain principles that we adhere to of like, I take care of myself, put the airflow mask on myself first, then put it on the child next to you or whatever. Yeah. I don't know.
No, I mean, yeah,
that's,
I feel like that's the world that I want to live in. I just don't feel like that's the world that I do live in. Does that make sense?
Oh, God, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen this chaos and of disagreement just about what information we even believe is true coming in at us and who we want to believe. Maybe we're all projecting like what we would like to be true. Yeah, we all need a big old couples counselor.
Oh man, don't we though? Don't we though? Anyway, I'm sure we could like go on and on with this. Yeah. I wish we could move on with more comments and questions, but that was our last one. So we're just gonna end the show there. Shirley, thank you so much for joining on the show today. Thank you so much for adding your own expertise and point of view. And it's just such a lovely soul to talk to and, kind of philosophically speak about these things in a deep level or a superficial level. So thank you for being here. What projects, if any, would you like to plug? And like where can people follow you online? Do you have any shows coming up or any poetry readings? Are you going to wax poetically on Facebook in the near future? Any conversations on Clubhouse? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, look up Early Girl on Instagram. I post a lot of textile arts. So I've gone really inward instead of outward with you know me from performance art with improv. But yeah, in the past year, the way I've processed is just a lot of embroidery, fabric manipulations, and really thinking through how do I go to a place beyond words to express how I'm feeling emotionally about what's happening in the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to connect.
That's really cool. Well, yeah, follow Shirley on Instagram and Twitter at Early Girl, IRLEY girl.
I haven't been on Twitter.
Oh, you're not on Twitter. Just on Instagram. Just go.
You can.
Try and find her on Snapchat. Try to find her on Twitter. Try to find, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Shirley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, guys, if you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what, how about Chloe Zhao? That's exactly what Chloe Zhao would want you to do from the Eternals, from Nomadland, and from the upcoming Dracula film. Anyway, guys, if you want to get a comment or a question on the show, all you have to do is email me at gottalovethemmovies@gmail.com. As long as it's family friendly, we will make your comment or a question a main topic on the show. So I very much look forward to hearing from you on the emails. You guys, we live in a I always do this. I always click on the wrong graphic. We live in a weird, crazy world where everybody has their own thoughts and opinions, and sometimes those thoughts and opinions clash. So if you have an opportunity to infuse a little kindness into the world, if you have an opportunity to speak kind words to each other, please take those opportunities. And as always, you guys, in the words of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. I'll see you guys tomorrow.